It is such a beautiful day today, so I thought Brett and I can relax outside a little bit, prepare some moss poles for my upcoming moss pole workshop and answer some of your questions. So let's go. Hello everybody and welcome back to our YouTube channel. What a beautiful day in the garden it is. I really wanted to enjoy a bit of time out here. So that's Brettles, huh? We're enjoying the new garden with the new fence, and tomorrow I'm running a moss pole workshop, and for that I need to prepare the mesh. I figured it's a little bit too much work to cut it all up in the workshop itself, so I want to prepare it so that tomorrow everything can be smooth. So basically I need to cut up a whole lot of mesh into the right proportions so that tomorrow we can turn them into moss poles as part of the workshop. And I thought, why not use this opportunity to also answer some of your questions. I've done many Q&As before. They're very much podcast style, so it's not going to be the most visual video, so it's a perfect video to put on in the background and go about your day, do your plant chores as usual, and I can kind of just, give you a bit of company, I suppose. And as always, I will leave all of the questions down in the description with timestamps so you can jump to the question that is most relevant to you. What did you see, huh? What's that? But of course, I would appreciate if you watch as much of the video as possible. Watch time is by far my most important metric, so the more of the video you can watch, the more you support me. Thank you in advance, but let's get started with the first question. By the way, this is a coated wire mesh. And I leave all of the dimensions on here. Yes, the same that I've been using for the last 5-6 years. I've made lots of moss poles with this mesh and I do love them. First things first, I need to actually cut the mesh, and then the time-consuming, annoying part is bending all the little edges so we don't hurt ourselves. But lucky I've got you guys to talk to. And Brett is just in the corner there now. Can we see him? Oh, darling, you're still right in frame. Such a good boy. It would be boring if we can't see him, right? Alrighty, first question. As a new grower to the indoor plant hobby, what would you recommend are habits you wished you knew earlier? I think I've got a full video on that actually. I think by now I have a full video on everything. And I probably should do another video similar to that, just to switch it up a little bit. But the first thing that comes to mind is, I think, understanding the difference between conditions and care. I sound like a broken record, but conditions, is basically light, humidity, airflow, temperature. The preferred conditions a plant wants to thrive in is set in the plant's DNA. It's not for you to choose. So over here, it's really, you either choose plants that suit your environment or you supplement your environment to suit the plants that you chose. And then care are things like watering, fertilizer, substrate, what kind of support you use, pest treatment and so on. I think at the beginning, I very much focused on care. I thought there's something that I can do or must do or should do to make a plant thrive and so on, when really I should have just cared more about understanding the conditions that I've got, understanding the conditions that my plants want, and then focus on optimizing that. Other thing that comes to mind is using clear pots. I think they're a really, really important step in assessing water requirements, root health, and so on. And doing everything in bulk. Making moss poles in bulk, doing aeroid mix in bulk, it's just so much more cost effective. So you get access to premium materials, but you don't need to pay premium for them because you just buy everything in bulk. He is so cute. Next question. We need an update. Will you really be moving, and are you searching for a job? Wishing you all the best from the EU. Okay, getting juicy straight away. Jeez, you guys are not holding back. Hi darling, what are you looking at? There's lots of little lizards around, that's why he's very intrigued. That's good, my baby's having so much fun. Look at me avoiding the question. I'm not avoiding it, I am just not super clear myself just yet. I do think my preference would be to move. I do enjoy change, so I don't mind having a new space available to work on and fill with plants. And you know, with a new space comes new challenges, keeps this hobby interesting, keeps the channel interesting, because we've got new things to look forward to, new spaces to unlock and so on. Obviously not excited about the actual moving aspect. That can be a little bit annoying, but it's also a great opportunity to just kind of, you know, cleanse your life a little bit, right? Like sometimes you just hold on to things because it's convenient. Once you actually have to move everything to a new location, you think about everything a little bit more critically. Do I really love this plant that much that I need to have 4 of them? Maybe not, you know, and so on. So, and not just with plants, also with just human possessions, right? You actually accumulate a lot of stuff if you just live somewhere for a long time. Or I've been taking stuff with me from one place to the other thinking, I will definitely use it, and now it's just been in the garage for 2 years and I haven't used it. So I do think a move is a good opportunity to cleanse your life a little bit, and I do think I can find something better. Maybe not as large, but it should be more cost effective than this place over here. It's quite expensive, and I'm assuming at the end of the year they're going to bump it up yet again, because that's what people do over here. Every year it just increases. The thing is, I would be looking for new places in December, January, because my lease is running out at the beginning of Feb, which is not the best time to look for rentals. It's also really competitive because it's holiday season, so a lot of rentals are turned into Airbnbs over that time. So realistically, there might just be nothing available. So if there is something available that I think is nicer and comes at a better cost, I'm willing to put in the effort of moving. I'm not shy of that. I think it's just sussing out what options I've got and then making a call on whether or not I deem that as a better result or not. Yeah, if I am forced to live here for another year, it's not a big issue. I do like this place here, but I would just love to reduce my cost a little bit so that I can save more money, so that eventually I can get out of this cycle of renting, right? If I always spend all my money on rent, then yeah. But yes, here we go. I'm somewhat relaxed on it. I've done a little bit of research on what properties are currently available, and I think based on the current market, I can definitely find properties at a cheaper cost that are potentially nicer. I mean, every property always looks good on in photos, right? Then you see it in real life and it smells like mold. And of course, these properties that are available now, they're going to snatch up within a week, right? This property, when I found this property, it was listed the day before I found it, and then the inspection was 2 days after that. And I applied for the property before inspecting it, went to the inspection, liked it, told the agent, let's go ahead with it. Within a week, we had the lease signed, right? So once a property becomes available, things move very fast. It's a very competitive space. So a property that's available now will not be available next week. So it definitely won't be available in December, January. So I suppose I gotta stay patient and see what's actually available at the time when I'm ready. And then, have I been searching for a new job? No, I actually haven't been searching. That doesn't mean that maybe people haven't been searching for me. Ooh, oh my god. It will be a surprise if I walk out of this uninjured, huh? Look, nothing has been confirmed, so I don't want to put something out there that's not going to eventuate. So I'll stay somewhat silent on this for now. But I have definitely been working on diversifying my income, right? Which is a smart thing, especially considering my financial background. Of course, you shouldn't put all of your eggs in one basket. Over the last few years, I have been heavily relying on YouTube being my main income source. Unfortunately, there's a lot of things out of my control on YouTube, while my subscriber numbers have steadily gone up, which is good. The views actually have not, right? So subscriber numbers are not an indicator for the amount of views, and ultimately I don't get paid by subscriber numbers. Subscribing is for free, watching is for free as well, but I get paid by the ads that play in front and in between videos, or share of YouTube Premium if you have YouTube Premium. So ultimately I need people to watch my videos, and I'm not getting enough traction on that front. And look, that's okay, you know, like that is business at the end of the day. You gotta analyze what works, what doesn't work, and then pivot. It's survival of the most adaptive, right? So I noticed it's not really working. I can obviously sit here and bitch and moan about it, or I can go ahead and actively do something about it. So I have been actively trying to diversify my income streams a little bit, and I basically do that by just not declining everything. Initially, like when somebody approaches me, do you want to do this or that, and I always just say no, because I don't know, I feel uncomfortable with things. I have now started to just go out of my comfort zone a little bit more and just say yes. If I get approached to something that I can confidently endorse, or I would like to be part of, then I just say yes instead of my initial reaction always saying no, which definitely pushes me a little bit, because I really like being at home talking to you guys, right? It is much harder getting out there talking to people as part of a workshop, or as part of like some activation things and so on, or working with brands and, you know, making sure I meet their requirements and so on. But I also am enjoying it to an extent, and I think I'm getting better at it, and I'm also learning more. Or like I feel like there's a bit of personal development here, like, you know, getting out of my comfort zone. So I have just started saying yes to more things in an attempt to hopefully diversify my income. Maybe I'll do some one-on-one consultations. I've tried some workshops. I mean that's what I'm doing right now, and that's good, but there's just too little people in Sydney that can attend workshops in person at that specific day as well, right? So I think I want to maybe move on to some online masterclasses. So basically a very long-winded answer of saying, yes, I'm probably going to move. I'm planning on moving, but it's not a bad thing. And no, I haven't been looking for jobs, but I am reducing my business's reliance on YouTube videos. So I think I might be going back down to 2 videos a week. Over the last year, I've been uploading 3 videos a week, which, look, I enjoy, because I see this as part of that's my main business, YouTube videos. I really enjoy doing them. I enjoy talking to you, I enjoy filming them, I enjoy recording my journey. I enjoy the editing because I have time to do the editing nowadays. All joy goes away when I post the video then, and I noticed that nobody else was as excited about the video as I was, which is a little bit unfortunate. So I think maybe I'm just oversaturating the market a little bit by just uploading too many videos. So I would rather like to go down to producing less videos, but each video performing a little bit better. So more quality. Jeez, this bird is on fire. So basically quality over quantity is my approach with YouTube. But I am concerned that if I upload less videos, even if there might be better quality, if they don't get more views, I'm losing my main income source. So that's why I've been saying yes to other things, so that I can be in a position to upload less videos, and even if they perform bad, then I'm not going to be homeless, right? So create a bit of a safety net first, and then, yeah, I think as we are approaching the end of this year, I'm probably going to slowly reduce the number of videos that I upload. Like I don't know, I don't have a specific schedule, just really see how many videos I can still produce while focusing on other things as well. But I definitely want to keep making videos. It might just not be 3 a week, right? I really enjoy this. Like my life would be a little sad if I wouldn't be doing YouTube videos anymore, for sure. On that note, I would love your help as well. Obviously help me out by watching my YouTube videos, but also if you have like a local plant fair, for example, a plant expo or something like that, and you feel like it would be nice to have me there. Let the organizers know so they can reach out to me and then I can come to some sort of agreement with them. Because I enjoy going to these fairs, I enjoy meeting people. It's always more powerful if people are asking for it rather than me going in advertising myself, being like, hey, you should invite me to this fair and so on, right? So if you have a local plant fair and you would like me to be there, you know, for, I don't know, I can do a panel discussion, I can do master classes and so on. Like, I would love to travel around, go to different countries, meet plant lovers from all over the world, and turn that into my business, or like a part of my business. So help me out over here. If you have a local plant event and you think that would be a good idea, let them know so they can reach out to me. Please. And of course, give the video a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel, and leave a nice comment. Anyway, I appreciate you asking and following up and caring about me as a person, rather than just wanting my plant advice. It's appreciated. Next one, philosophical question. Hard to phrase it in English for me, but I will try. Is growing out of your apartment's condition for plants a thing? Let me explain. I am living 5 years in the same apartment. The year cycle is the same: light, warmth, humidity, etc. Lately I feel like my plants have reached their maximum potential that they can do in terms of growth in this apartment. It feels like they just stay the same size and just flourish, not like they are not growing. We did multiple chop and extends. The leaves are mega big, but we, plants and I, can't seem to be able to do the next big step in evolving, upsizing, etc. Any idea on this? Yes, 100%. You can max out the plant's potential indoors. The conditions set the potential. Your conditions indoors are most likely not going to match the native conditions of this plant, or the natural conditions this plant is exposed to in, let's say, a tropical rainforest. So by default, your plant growing indoors has less potential to mature and grow large and thrive than a plant that would grow in its natural environment. So it looks like you just maxed out the conditions in your house. Looks like you maxed out the potential that the conditions have set. I have that with lots of plants as well. Like my Glory is sized up over the course of 18 months or so, and now it's just been the same plant for the last 3 years, right? Obviously I go through chop and extends, it reverts a little bit and then it grows bigger again and so on. In winter, smaller leaves, and summer, slightly bigger leaves, but overall it just stays on the same level of growth. So does my adansonii, so does my verrucosum, for example, recently sent out huge flowers and almost like reached like peak maturity, right? Think about it. Even in nature, plants reach a maximum maturity. If plants wouldn't reach a maximum maturity, you would have like one plant covering the whole earth with just its ginormous leaves at this stage, right? So evolutionary, it only makes sense for a plant to grow so large, and that's set in the plant's DNA. So even if you would be able to improve your conditions further, you're still eventually going to max it out. The plant's purpose is usually to grow to maturity, then flower and spread the DNA, and then end of the life cycle, right? It's like us humans, we eventually max out. Imagine you just feed your baby the best possible food. Doesn't mean that your baby is going to grow indefinitely. At some stage it's just reached adult stage and that's it. I suppose it's not the most enjoyable stage of growing, and I think that's kind of what I'm trying to explain when I say it's like enjoy the journey. The journey of growing a plant from a small cutting into a mature specimen, that's the fun part. Once it's a mature specimen, it's now just maintaining the same plant over and over again. It loses a little bit of the interest. Yes, it's nice to have this mature plant, to own it and to look at it, but I found it more fun to actually grow it and observe the journey. That's why I always keep saying, enjoy the journey. Don't aim for an end result. First of all, there is no end result, but second of all, that end result isn't even as exciting as the journey can be. Yeah, and at that stage in the journey, sometimes I've grown a plant to maturity, and then I realized actually that's not really what I wanted. I actually preferred this plant when it was a little bit more juvenile. And then I'm not afraid to cut the plant up and start again. So again, it's all about the journey rather than just continuously maxing out your plant for me, at least these days. I just like to prove to myself once that I can do it, and from there I choose based on aesthetics. But good on you for even getting that far in the first place. That's a pretty big achievement. You have a very nice philodendron verrucosum. Can you tell us about fertilizing and how often you fertilize? I actually have a full everything you need to know about philodendron verrucosum, so I think that is my recommendation to watch. It's in my plant spotlight playlist. Because ultimately the fertilizer isn't going to make or break your philodendron verrucosum, right? There's a lot of other things that need to be right, specifically the conditions. But just to answer your question, I use GT Foliage Focus in a weak dilution on a weekly basis. So with every watering, I provide liquid nutrients. And I actually just came back from the GT headquarters. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I went to Perth, WA, where GT, Growth Technology Australia, is located, and I was able to meet their head chemist, researcher, founder of the brand and everything, and we had hours and hours and hours of very nerdy conversation about chemical reactions and all sorts. Basically, I feel like I know everything about nutrients now, and I really want to do a dedicated video on nutrients and what I use, why I use it, and so on. Short version is that there's 12 essential minerals for plants to grow. The product I use, GT Foliage Focus, which is, by the way, always linked in the description, basically has all 12 of them in the correct proportion to focus on foliage growth, and it is very bioavailable, so the plant can absorb it straight away. So that's why I provide a weak dilution of it on a weekly basis. So I basically continuously feed my plants. And I like using it via water, a liquid nutrient, because that way I can also provide nutrients to my moss pots, for example. Moss itself has no nutrients, so I need to provide nutrients to the moss, and that's easiest done via the water. Huh? Have you ever had mealybugs on your plants? If so, how do you treat them? I don't think you mentioned them when you talked about pests in your collection, but I could be wrong. I think I've seen mealybugs for the first time this winter over here, or at least first time that I've really recalled seeing mealybugs. Historically has not really been a big issue, and even when I saw them, it's not really been a big issue. I just used contender spray, which I already have because I used that one for thrips. Has it eradicated the issue? No, I still see some here and there every now and then. Am I worried about it? No, I don't know, like, they don't seem to be a big issue for me. Or, yeah, I don't know, these days I'm pretty relaxed though. I mean, I had a shocking year with pests this winter. I had so many aphids and thrips. I just kind of take them for a given. It's just like, I know that at all times my plant collection has all of the pests in the world, but I think even just by taking them outside and cleaning them and hosing them off, obviously not going to eradicate them, but it's going to stop them from really destroying the plant in the first place. So I've been more diligent with my proactive approach. I don't notice the plants suffering as much as a result of it, with the exception of aphids. I really had a hard time getting on top of them, and they really did some damage to some of my plants this winter, but yeah, nothing that I couldn't recover, let's say. Yeah, but basically just use contender spray for everything apart from spider mites. That's when I use killer mite. Oh, and fungus nets, I use tenlin drops, which I think there's a question coming up as well. Let's just answer that. What do I do for fungus nets, or how do I keep fungus nets in check? Hang on. Bebe. You don't go into the corner of death. 2 ways of dealing with fungus nets. Preferred way is proactively avoid any of them. So any substrate, all of my substrate is soilless, which basically technically means I grow hydroponically. Anyway, different conversation. I don't use soil. I use separate ingredients for my aeroid mix that are all sterile. So they've all been sterilized already, like steam treated bark, for example, and so on. So I basically avoid bringing in pests with my substrate in the first place. And then still can't really avoid it because, for example, the tree fern fiber I used last year had heaps of fungus nets in it, and I forgot to sterilize it myself. So I use tenlin drops, also called tea drops. It's BCI, I think it's a bacteria that's in it basically that kills the larvae of the fungus gnats, so it eliminates the whole life cycle of them. So yeah, I've used that for a year now and I haven't had any fungus gnats since that first infestation. I just kind of proactively continue to use it with every watering to make sure that they're just not coming back. So yeah, can really recommend that. But of course, if you want to save costs, just use it reactively rather than proactively. Bradley, the next question is for you. He is very distracted with the lizard. By lizard, I mean the teeny tiny ones, by the way, like not huge ones. Otherwise, I would not be so chilled over here, trust me. And that's also fair. He needs to enjoy his precious garden time. How old is Bradley? Bradley, how old are you, huh? He is, on 1st of November, he is turning 7. Big boy. So yeah, he's an old man now, huh? Bradley, are you old? But still very cute. And next one, are you of German origin? How did you end up in Sydney? Ja, ich bin in Deutschland geboren und aufgewachsen und mit 19 bin ich nach Australien ausgewandert. That was German. It is weird to speak German, especially in front of the camera. Like, I really only speak German to my friends and family on the phone. I don't really even have anybody in Australia that I speak German with. But basically I said yes, that I was born and raised in Germany and that I moved to Australia when I was 19. And it was just supposed to be a working holiday, but I fell in love with the country and the people, and yeah, the rest is history. I do really enjoy it here. I am a dual citizen as well, so I am officially German and Australian. Hello darling, you're one question late. Do you know when your birthday is? No? Well, it's coming up soon and you get extra cake, yeah? Oh yeah, you get like a nice little tuna cake or something like that. Disgusting. So I got distracted. I have to say I consider Australia my home because yeah, like my entire adult life has been spent in Australia. I do feel more Aussie than German on a day-to-day basis, but I think I definitely, like, you know, my upbringing and my German heritage and my German parents, you know, I can see the Germanness in me, which is not a bad thing at all. I like it. I'm very proud of being born and raised there, and I wouldn't change a thing, but it's too cold for me. I don't think I could move back and just deal with the cold. It's just weird. I've never really had an adult life in Germany, right? When I think of Germany and I think of myself in Germany and my life in Germany, I was a child, you know. Whereas if I think of myself in Australia, I think of myself as a grown-up with decision-making power and a job and all of that, you know, responsibilities as well, of course. But I always wanted to be independent. I wanted to be old. I never wanted to be a child, actually. That was way more than the question asked for, but I gave it to you anyway. You're welcome. I have a silver sword. It has 4 plants in the pot. Only one of them has reached the top of the second pole. Could I just chop the tallest one and it will reshoot further down the pole while the others catch up before I have to extend? Thanks. By the way, we have VIP tickets to your US trip. Super excited. I'm also super excited. I have one more announcement to make on the US trip. It's not confirmed yet. I teased it the other day in my gardening video, but I'm pretty sure it's going to go ahead. Oh my god, why am I beating around the bush? Basically, I'm trying to organize a masterclass for while I'm there in an attempt to diversify my income. So I'm trying to get a corporate sponsor to pay for the masterclass so that it is for free for the people that already attend the event as it is. So there's no additional cost for the attendees, but I get paid for my efforts, right? So, you know, putting my business hat on. So hopefully I won't just be in the US and get to meet everybody, but hopefully I'll also be able to do a little masterclass over there that would be really nice. And if you don't know anything about the event, everything is down in the description. And I'm also doing a giveaway. Anybody who buys a ticket using my discount code gets a chance to win a one-on-one consultation with me online. So yeah, lots of good things happening, lots of exciting news. I'm coming to the US. I'm doing a giveaway, and I'm probably going to do a masterclass there as well. So I'm very excited to see all of my US friends. Anyway, that was not the question. I forgot the question. I got so sidetracked by the good news. What was the question? I have no recollection of that. Sorry. Oh, the philodendron silver sword. Yes, I often do that. You can just give the top a little trim, and then obviously it will take a little bit of time to reshoot, and that should give the other plants some time to catch up. Now, the way plants work is they will always send growth hormones into the newest node, the latest node, most likely. Sometimes it reshots in multiple nodes as well, if you're lucky, but that's not really a rule. That's more like a hoping for the best kind of scenario. So it depends on how much the plant has outgrown the others. You might want to give it a significant cutback so that it activates a node a little bit lower. Otherwise, the reshoot is going to outperform the other plants straight away yet again. The other thing is eventually that issue is going to become worse and worse. Like, some plants just have way more desire to live. So that plant is probably always going to outperform the others. So it's probably something that you have to do continuously, not just once. It's probably something that throughout the whole life stage of that display that you've created, one plant will outperform the others. So maybe at some stage you can also just cut the top off, continue that plant that really shoots the lights out, and just grow one to maturity and keep the other one as a lush pole and so on. That's what I sometimes do. Basically, long-winded answer of saying yes, you could do that, but it might not fix your issue in the long run. It might just be a short-term fix, but everything is a short-term fix with plants, right? Because they keep growing. Like, you do have to continuously put in effort, especially if you're also aiming for a specific aesthetic on top of that. But yeah, I do that often, especially in winter, for example. I do that or after winter, because winter growth might have not been that nice anyway. So you're basically just chopping off winter growth and then getting the plant to reshoot. Or I do it if I notice that the plant reaches the top of a moss pole in winter, but I don't want to do a chop and extend. And I just clip the top off. It gives the plant a bit of time to reshoot, and that buys me a little bit of time. Ever considered offering a premium service, subscribers pay for, where you answer subscribers plant questions regarding their plants? Every so often I'm stumped as to what's wrong and could really use a service like that. Basically plant consultations, right? Look, I understand that with this sort of Q&A that we do right now, it's not super targeted at one person, right? And I'm trying to keep the questions somewhat general, or answer the questions somewhat general, rather than you sending me a pic of your specific plant and then I workshop that with you. I do have a different series called Dr. SPG where I actually do that. But that is a lot of effort to produce. It's very time consuming to produce, and the videos don't perform that well. That's why I kind of stopped doing those videos. So yes, I have considered doing plant consultations, like one-on-one, and I've looked at other plant influencers who've been growing plants for a much shorter amount of time, who are offering plant consultations at a really high cost, where I was gobsmacked, because in my head, like, I feel underqualified of providing plant consultations. So seeing other people who I personally think are less qualified do it with so much confidence definitely gave me a little bit of confidence, where I was just like, okay, stop being your own worst critic and just go ahead and do it. And I think it's definitely something I want to do in the new year. Once I finished with the workshop and I finished with the whole moving situation, I need to put a little bit of effort into that. I think once I'm settled into the new house, I would love to do more one-on-one plant consultations. I think it's the logical step to go workshops, classes first, more general, and then maybe going into more one-on-ones later. And I'm doing some free consultations as well, like as a giveaway with the big plant expo, for example. AJ from Growing Grounds is going to run a giveaway for the launch of her new website, and I'm going to do a plant consultation with one person on the back of that as well, which is Australia only, by the way. So I'm kind of easing myself into this by giving out some free consultations first, and I think that will help me build a little bit of confidence while taking the pressure off. It's for free, right? Who's going to complain about something? People will find a way to complain, but most likely people are less likely to complain if they got something for free. So I think it will just ease me into this while making me comfortable about it. I always mentioned I feel a bit uncomfortable taking money from my audience directly. I think brands that benefit on the back of it, and Google, like you know, YouTube, Google, Instagram, Meta, those are the big companies that benefit from us sharing and consuming content on their platforms. I think I feel more comfortable with my paycheck being paid by them rather than the end user, because, you know, cost of living crisis, everything is so expensive. But look, if there's demand, I shall supply, I suppose. You know, I suppose that's where the, you know, initial conversation where I said I'm saying yes more often, I think that's where that's coming in. It's something that I felt uncomfortable about, but I just need to say yes and suck it up, and eventually I will feel more comfortable about it. Very long-winded answer of saying yes. I suppose I have a lot of wires to bend, so I'm just dragging out the replies a bit. Sorry, guys. Will there ever be a philodendron lupinum in your collection? The transition from juvenile to mature form would be so cool to see. I actually had one, and it was not precious enough to overwinter indoors, so it died last winter or the winter before that, a few winters ago. But yes, it does go through a really nice transformation as it matures, and I actually captured that transformation at AJ's when I visited her. At some stage, she had a really nice lupinum that displayed all the stages of maturity on one pole, and I have to say the juvenile version looked the best. So it's one of those plants where I don't think maturity is really that desirable. So if I'd have it, I would probably grow it to maturity just to prove to myself that I can do it, and then I would then attempt at growing a juvenile one going forward. I haven't really seen them around. There was a moment where they were like hot, you know, and you were able to really get your hands on them. It's not a plant I would go out of my way to source, but if it's there, or if somebody gifts me a cutting, then I wouldn't mind. But I also need to reduce the plants that I grow, especially leading up to the move. Maybe once I moved and I know my new space, I don't know how many plants I can bring with me, I'll be more inclined to add some new plants. Do you find that your large-leaved moss pods drop more lower leaves because it's too hard for them to sustain all the leaves with the limited resources? I don't think so. Maybe. I suppose it depends on how thick the moss pole is. Like, nobody said that you need to limit the resources. You can make a thicker moss pole for your thicker plants. You can provide more nutrients for your mature plants and so on. I think there's a few reasons. First of all, I'm getting more picky with the leaves that I keep if every leaf has a huge petiole and a huge leaf. So I've done a video on this very recently where I reset my office, and I take all of my plants out, I shower them all, and then I put them back. And I'm basically explaining that I'm not here to optimize every single plant and every plant holding onto as many leaves as possible. Because I have so many plants and so limited space, I'm trying to optimize the display of my plants. So, I mean, out here I have way more space, so I'm less likely to cut things off here. But in my office, for example, I have all of my favorite velvets and very limited space. So I'd rather have, let's say, like 4 beautiful splendid leaves, 4 beautiful verrucosum leaves, and 4 beautiful glorious leaves that kind of just slot into each other and create one nice display, instead of having 10 splendid leaves where 8 of them are bruised and ugly, and those are shading all of the verrucosum leaves, so the verrucosum is now dying, and the glorious is so big that it takes up the space that normally 3 other plants could take up, and so on, right? So it's more about optimizing a collection. So in itself, I'm more picky with what plant gets to keep which leaves. I cut off a lot of leaves, even though they might not be dead or yellow. They might just have some visual markings, because large leaves also brush against everything, so they are more likely to have some markings from the wall or from a neighboring moss pole. If they stick in the wrong direction, I cut them off because they no longer fit the display. And of course, with mature plants, they grow less leaves less quickly, right? Each leaf might take like a month to even just unfurl and expand, and then the next leaf is going to take another month, and so on, right? Whereas juvenile leaves get pushed out much quicker. So overall, and with maturity, the plant grows with shorter internodal spacing. So there's just, the plant doesn't outgrow the moss pole so quickly. So by the time a large mature plant reaches the top of the moss pole, it's been on that moss pole for much longer, which means that the bottom leaves have been alive for much longer, which means that they're less likely to still be pretty. Each leaf just has a limited lifespan, right? So I think that also feeds into it, right? My chop and extend frequency decreases as the plant matures. Hence, each leaf is displayed for longer. Hence, more likely I'm going to cut it off eventually. So basically, I don't think it is a limited resource thing. It could be, but that's an issue you could work on. I think it's just a aesthetic preference on my side. Like, a small leaf isn't in the way of anything, right? So I'm less likely to chop it. I'm only likely to chop if it's really ugly. Yeah, sorry, your question basically asks if the poles drop the leaves. I don't think if the plants drop the leaves. I don't think the plants drop the leaves. I chop them. I make the decision, not the plant. And you absolutely don't have to do that, by the way. If you want to hold onto every leaf for dear life, like, you can do that. But aesthetics is really at the forefront for me. So if the way I'm growing a plant isn't working for me aesthetically, then what's the point? Do you rotate pest treatment as the insect becomes immune to particular treatments after a while? Actually, I don't. I never really thought about it. Also, I don't treat with chemicals that often, right? Like, I most of the time just do my proactive approach with watering. Another thing over here is also, I think, a healthy plant. Like, you know, if your plant is growing well in good conditions, is kept clean, nutrients are provided, the plant should have an easy enough time to fight back small pest infestations itself, and or at least not suffer through them as much. So I've never had the need to really rotate or do something differently. To be honest, I wouldn't even know what to do differently, because pest treatment is one of these things where I've just never really actively looked into. It's just, I've been given recommendations by other people that use a certain product, and I've just used it and I've noticed good results, and I just passed on my recommendation. But I don't even have enough knowledge to really know what to supplement it with, you know, what to use instead. So I don't know, but if somebody has a recommendation on where I can learn about pest treatment, like a reputable source, is there like some authority, some like papers that I can read or something like that, that would be nice. It's probably something I should look into eventually, but I'm starting to just pay a little bit more interest into the nutrient side first. And not just use the nutrients, but understand why I use the nutrients and what they do to my plants and so on. So I'm working on that first, and then maybe the next learning curve can be pest. One thing at a time, you know. Don't overwhelm myself too much. At the end of the day, I'm really busy making my plants look pretty. If you could only have 5 plants, which ones would they be? Oh, that's such a tricky question, because I suppose that would change at any given time when you ask me, but I suppose you're asking me today, so I'm giving you today's answer. Definitely philodendron verrucosum, my all-time favorite, and I think it's a plant that you can grow quite mature, juvenile, teenage. You can grow it in multiple stages and it looks good in all stages. Look at the sun hitting the wall of aeroids now. Monstera adansonii will probably be my favorite monstera to choose, specifically the subspecies Laniata that I've got, because again you can grow juvenile and mature. It always looks stunning and it grows really well for me, and it's one of the easier ones to grow. Maybe Mandula pothos from a variegation perspective. Again, I think grows nicely trailing, climbing, juvenile, mature, has some of the most stunning variegation and is a little bit different to the other two that I added. Alocasia cuprea, because it's not a climber for once, and it's definitely the alocasia that's grown the best for me and had the most impact and is just the most stunning. I'm inclined to say Oxalis triangularis, but I feel like I've got purple covered with the cuprea already. And I only have one left. It has to be maybe Queen Anthurium. Let's do that. I think that's a nice mix of velvets, fenestration, variegation, climbers. 5 is definitely not enough. That's a bloody hard question. But with that answer, also would really depend on the space that I've got available. I think if a plant doesn't work with the space, then I'd rather have a plant that might not initially be my favorite, but I know it works in that space. You know, I think a basic plant grown really well will always look better than a really fancy plant grown terribly. Like if I wouldn't have the conditions to make a philodendron verrucosum thrive and it would just perpetually look sad, then what's the point? And I'd rather grow a common pothos, but it's absolutely shooting the lights out, if you know what I mean. But let's say I can create all of the perfect conditions I want and every plant would be thrive to their full potential. I suppose those would be the 5. What philodendron would you recommend for beginners? I suppose it really depends on your conditions. I would recommend plants that naturally suit the conditions that you've got to offer. So you can focus on perfecting your care approach instead of worrying so much about supplementing your conditions. So, for example, one of my first philodendron was actually philodendron verrucosum, which would be universally known as quite a finicky, tricky plant to grow because it likes high humidity, not too much light, is a crazy spider mite infestation, has a very disappointing root system, so isn't very tolerant to drying out periods and so on. So yeah, not the easiest learning curve to go through, but when I got it, Sydney has naturally high humidity, I naturally had quite little light available, and I like to water. So it kind of worked really well for me, and I had the best time with philodendron verrucosum for the first 2-3 years. I also had enough time to take it to the shower every week, so I kind of always just avoided spider mites. It only became tricky to grow once I didn't have that much time to dedicate to it anymore. So for me, it was actually an easy plant to grow at the beginning and very, very rewarding. And everybody's like, how do you find verrucosums easy? And it's just because the plant naturally had a good time in my space. Whereas, let's say like a philodendron pink princess, which a lot of people get initially, and it's technically a little hardier, right? Has like the leathery leaves and so on. I didn't like the look of the plant that much, so I also wasn't really willing to put that much effort into it, and it really showed. Like, it just never really grew that well for me. Whereas objectively, people would probably say that a pink princess is easier to grow than a verrucosum. So I really think it depends on the person and the environment that you've got available. Are you an overwaterer, like a helicopter parent, or do you need a philodendron that grows or thrives on neglect, that can tolerate drying out a little bit more? Do you have dry conditions to offer or humid conditions? Some philodendron don't want too much humidity, for example. Is it very bright? Are you willing to grow on a moss pole or not, and so on. So it's really hard to say that a specific plant is easy, because I don't know what you perceive as easy, and I don't know what your environment is, so I don't know how much effort you would need to put in supplementing, which wouldn't make it easy anymore. So I don't want to throw out a species and kind of tell you that it's really easy to grow when it might not be easy to grow for you, or vice versa. And also, I don't know your taste. Like, what's the point in growing a plant that's easy to grow if you don't actually like it, maybe? But I think some general guidelines: go for hybrids instead of species. So for example, philodendron glorious and philodendron splendid are much easier to grow than the species verrucosum, gloriosum and melanochrysum. Go for leathery, glossy leaves over velvets. Velvets seem to be a little bit harder and much more inclined to have pests. And maybe go for a plant that doesn't need a moss pole straight away. So you can make learnings on your plant and your conditions before you add the additional challenge of now learning all about moss poles. So maybe go for a plant that's more clumpy, or I don't like crawlers actually. Stay away from crawlers, they're absolute spider mite infestations. Yeah, like I mean, like what's like a red Congo or a green Congo and so on. Like I mean, that's everybody's first plant, and I think they're kind of easy to grow. I actually think monsteras are really easy to grow, but if you want philodendron, obviously that's not your cup of tea. You can also just go to a big box store and see what's on sale, what's really cheap. If it's inexpensive, it's an easy one to make learnings with. Doesn't mean that you will be successful with it, but at least you made learnings with it and you didn't spend a whole lot of money on it, and you have nothing to lose, right? Sorry, I know that's one of the feedbacks I get a lot. Like people are just like, why don't you just get to the point? Like we just want to know the answer. Why don't you just say a species? I don't know, I would feel like a fraud if I just give you an answer, because I know in my head that this answer isn't correct necessarily, right? My goal is not to answer your questions as quickly as possible or answer as many as possible. My goal is to give you as much context as possible so that hopefully I'm not just answering the question, but I'm broadening your thinking about the hobby a little bit. I did a video the other day about the questions, so what questions to ask and what questions not to ask and what questions to ask instead. And some people were like mad at me for like, why don't you just answer the question? Like, you know, just like, how often do I water? People are like, I didn't want all this explanation, I just wanted a number. And it's like, yeah, but that's precisely the point. Like, I'm trying to tell you why asking for a number is the wrong thing to do, and I'm trying to give you context, but obviously people just want the easy fix. But my reply was basically just, if you want a simple answer, Google. If you want to learn a whole skill and be provided with context, follow my page. So, I'm sorry that I'm waffling on, but that's actually my style of communication. Have you heard of using banana fibers as a soil amendment rather than coco coir or peat moss? Don't use peat moss, by the way. Use coco peat instead, please. Much more environmentally sustainable. Just attended the Dallas PlantCon and there's a product called Banana Bloom that's really interesting as an alternative. I have never heard about it. I can see why it would work, like why not? I mean, people use rice husk, people use coconut chips and coco peat, right? So the outside of the coconut and so on. So it makes sense. I mean, it's an organic material at the end. Would I go out of my way to finding it? No. Do you need to pay a premium for that? Probably also no. It comes back to the thing that I always say, when it comes to care, we have lots and lots of flexibility. As long as your substrate has a good mix of drainage and aeration and water retention, it will work. I'm assuming the coconut, the banana leaf shell, whatever, might add some nice texture to your substrate, so add aeration and drainage while also maintaining a little bit of moisture. So I can see how it works in theory, but I don't see how it would add something so incredibly unique to your substrate that no other product can do, that I would now go out of my way. I think I would only use it if it's cheaper than products that I already use. Next one, ever had issues with too much light? I think I have a problem with my adansonii in regards to this. Yes, most likely I experience that with my velvets. The velvets definitely don't want that much light. Too much light can sometimes make your plants a little bit bleached, so they don't have this really dark green. So think about it. The green part is chlorophyll. Chlorophyll photosynthesizes, so it would make sense for a plant that gets less light to have more chlorophyll because it needs to compensate for the lack of light. Does that make sense? Honestly, I didn't read this up or anything like that. That's just what common sense tells me, and I could be wrong. But I think plants that get access to less light are usually darker green. Like plants that are exposed to a lot of light are often silverish, for example, right? Anyway, obviously mass generalization, but yes, basically I think when you expose it to too much light, the colors get washed out a little bit. Obviously crispy edging, sunburn. I have plants in my greenhouse that get sunburned. The other day one got sunburned, for example, because the tree coverage is only now really kicking in, but the sun has already been quite harsh. We've had one of the hottest Octobers on record. We're breaking so many records this year, and we say that every year, so at some stage we probably just need to accept that every year will be extraordinary. Keep in mind, a lot of these plants in nature would grow in the understory, would maybe climb up a tree, but the tree would still significantly shade the plant in nature. So not all plants need that much light. A lot of the grow lights that I use are not that strong. They're just consistent, right? So a lot of these houseplants that we grow, a lot of these tropical aeroids, they're like consistent, bright, indirect light, not a lot of harsh sunlight suddenly. Also, if you expose your plant to too much light, sometimes the leaves actually get smaller because the plant wants to expose less of it to the sun. Whereas if you give it if you give it slightly less light, the plants will grow larger leaves to expose more of it to the light. So yeah, trial and error. I suppose you can measure light and then look for reference and so on, but I always just went with trial and error. If the leaf size is continuously increasing and the plant is looking nice and rich in color, then I'm probably giving it sufficient light. Of course, the color can come in from other things like root health, nutrient deficiency, and so on. But yeah, rule of thumb. But yeah, more isn't always more. Suppose we're not growing trees, right? Can you make more videos featuring Bradley? He's so adorable. You're welcome. Look, I don't force him to do anything. If he wants to be around, then he gets to be part of it, and it's just a genuine interaction between us. If he does not want to be part of it, I won't force him, right? If he just wants to sleep and I have filming to do, then so be it. I think that kind of makes it nice, because that's when you guys know, when you see Brad on screen, that's like genuine, you know what I mean? I didn't like trick him with a treat, apart from the the award shows, you know, when I do my end of year award shows, sometimes I have to bribe him with some licky to do his performances, you know? Don't die, darling. No question, but update on Cebu Blue would be nice. These two leaves there, yeah, that's it. It has honestly not grown in a year now, so if there was anything to update you on, I would. Will amount of light, i.e. too much, affect the color of velvet philodendron? My melanochrysum, El Choco Red and verrucosum don't seem as dark as yours. They are still fairly young, 6 to 8 months old, under T5 Barina light and in a grow tent. Especially with velvets, if you want that dark color out of it, more isn't always more. Could be too much light, could also be not enough nutrients. So play around with it a little bit and see what fixes the issue. Could be a combination, right? It's not always just one thing. I'm scared of adding anthuriums to my collection based on research and other opinions. Are they that much more difficult to care for? And do they face more bug problems? What am I missing? Look, again, it's really hard to say what's hard to care for and what's not, because as I mentioned before, I thought, for example, philodendron verrucosum is quite easy. Anthuriums was also the last genus that I kind of gotten into. I started with philos and monsteras and then went into the velvet philos and so on. And anthuriums was definitely one that I was kind of a bit hesitant about, but it was because at the time they were also very, very expensive. I had a good time starting them off in my IKEA cabinet, and they grew really well in there. And then I definitely struggled getting them used to my ambient conditions. And I still struggle with them sometimes, for sure, but I don't find them that tricky, let's say. I suppose it depends on what you're aiming for. I find them really beautiful, so I find there to be a lot of hybrids, so there's a lot of interest, you know, it doesn't get boring. But I definitely struggle in keeping a lot of leaves on my anthuriums at any given time, while the leaves also still look good. I've had a lot of thrips on mine. They seem to be the most thrips heavy plant for me. I don't have thrips on any of my other plants to that extent, so in that sense I do think they're a bit of a thrips magnet, and I find them to easily have fungal issues, very easily get yellow edges. I don't know if that is a humidity thing, if it's my watering, if it's the pH of my water. I don't measure pH or things like that. Ow! Oh, you sorry. Oh my god, stabbed myself real good there. Yes, I find them difficult to keep pristine, let's say, but I just have one shelf with lots of anthuriums, and even if each one just has 1 or 2 leaves, they look really, really good. So I just adjusted my expectation. I'm not expecting one anthurium to be an amazing statement piece. With anthuriums, it's very much with like my wall of velvet philos. I want to create one collection of anthuriums that looks good. Bottom line, whether or not they're difficult for you is best explored in practice. So just try it, give it a try. There should be seedlings or smaller anthuriums quite readily available at very inexpensively these days. So, you know, if you don't invest all too much money in it, you can't lose all too much money on it, or you don't have to be too worried. He's just sitting in the sun there. Definitely nothing to be afraid of. What's the worst that can happen? You can buy a plant and it somehow dies. I wouldn't even say anthuriums don't die that often. Like, they just often get reduced back to a stump and then it just regrows from the stump. Like, you can still always regrow it. Like, I don't think I've ever really lost an anthurium where it's like completely gone. Just at times they look a bit ugly. When you get them right, they look stunning, and the journey of the leaf unfurling is so rewarding. So yeah, I want my moss pole with adansonii to have many shoots and make a fuller display, but I'm concerned about chopping it in autumn, start of winter. Should I wait until spring? I personally chop mine at any time. I suppose it depends on, are you relying on natural light, or are you providing it with a grow light that will be consistent throughout the year? Are you planning on cutting it and then taking it off the pole and starting it again, or are you just cutting it and then leaving it on the pole? If you're just cutting it and leaving it on the pole, that's what I've currently done with mine. I just chop between a lot of nodes and I'm waiting for them to reshoot. Gonna do a full video on that. I've done that during winter, or like actually it was more beginning of spring, but I've done it before during winter. You know, you're not providing that much shock to the plant, you're just chopping it, but then you're not changing the conditions, you're not changing the medium, you're not disturbing the root, you're not really disturbing the roots and so on, so then it would be fine. Look, if you're concerned, then just wait a little bit longer. But adansonias should be fairly resilient. It might just take a little bit longer to reshoot, but I should still reshoot just fine. Check if your plant has thoroughly rooted into the pole. If the plant has thoroughly rooted into the pole, I don't think you would have to be concerned. Also depends on how harsh your winter is. Our winter isn't that harsh. Nothing is thriving, but it's not going to like die. The fact that you asked me the question makes me think that you should probably wait. Yeah, maybe wait. I don't want you to have sleepless nights because of it, which you really shouldn't in the first place, but you know what I mean. Have you ever tried going boat mode, up potting your anthuriums to a way larger pot to get your anthurium to size up faster? Boat mode? Why boat mode? Why would it be called boat mode? Maybe boost mode? Maybe there's... I don't know. No, I actually try and keep my pots as small as possible because I don't have that much space. Pots take up a lot of space and are quite heavy on that shelf, so where possible, I would like to keep the plants small actually, especially with my anthuriums. I'm not aiming for maturity on all of my anthuriums. As I mentioned before, I really just started aiming for a more consistent display of lots of nice leaves, lots of fresh leaves. I think when anthuriums first come out, like the new leaves are so amazing. So no, I never really tried, but if I would have unlimited space available, it would definitely be something I would try. But with big pots comes a lot of substrate. It gets really expensive really quickly if you have as many plants as I do. So no, never really felt the need to. If anything, I keep my anthuriums more root bound than any of my other plants, because they have to hold on to the least amount of leaves at any given time, because I so frequently chop them off because they get ugly so quickly. But if you have, let us know in the comments if it actually worked or not. Hey, why don't you grow Hoya? Well, I think I have explained my hatred for Hoyas. Actually, I don't hate them. I just think a lot of them look a little bit uninspiring. Look, this whole hobby started because I wanted to take small plants and grow them as large as possible, as quickly as possible. That's really what got me excited, that sort of ambitious part to the hobby. And Hoyas just don't really offer that. From what I've seen, they don't go through this amazing transformation. They just grow really bushy eventually, which can look good, but it was just not really that enticing for me initially. I'm also not really growing plants for their flowers and so on. I actually have one Hoya now that I let trail through the greenhouse. It just attaches itself to the beams and so on, and it's cute. It's like a nice little filler, but yeah, to me Hoyas are more of a filler, not necessarily a showstopper, and I am after showstoppers because yeah. But on the back of me complaining about Hoyas, a lot of people have sent through some nice Hoyas or sent me videos in my DMs and so on, and yes, there can definitely be nice Hoyas, and there can also be nice Hoyas where actually each leaf is quite interesting. I just have no desire to really add them, and by now I've been so vocal about hating Hoyas, and so many people have asked me to give Hoyas a shot that I really don't want to give Hoyas a shot, you know. I was like, no, I want to stand by my principles. Anyway, I have so many plants by now. I don't need to add more plants. I definitely don't need to add a whole new genus and get into a whole new thing, especially if they're not really tickling my fancy that much in the first place. Like, I'm so picky with what plants I add to my collection these days. I'm definitely not going like out of my way to add a Hoya for now. Maybe one day my space requirements will have changed and Hoyas is the only thing that grows for me. I don't know. What substrate do you use for your Maranta collection? I did a whole video on my Maranta collection the other day where I addressed that in a little bit more detail as well, so feel free to check that out. But basically equal parts of coco peat, worm castings and perlite. You don't need the worm castings. You could just do half coco peat, half perlite, and then provide liquid nutrients instead. And then last one, if you could change anything about the plant hobby and its current situation, what would that be? Oh, what a loaded question. It might not be specific to the plant hobby. I think it's in general life. I would love to have access to more quality products produced by small companies at an affordable price, which is a big ask, right? Because if we're talking about small companies, they have less resources, they have less economies of scale, so automatically one of their products is going to be a little bit more expensive. We need to decide, are we supporting small businesses and do the right thing and do the ethical thing, or are we saving money because we also need to pay for our bills, right? And it's not, and I would love to be in a position where, you know, I can support the small business because I don't need to save money because we're not living in a cost of living crisis, but ultimately it is what it is. You got to look out for yourself. So I would love to purchase more things from small businesses and support them, but I don't have the funds to do so at the end of the day, and I'm sure that a lot of my audience is going to be in the same situation. So I have to support large businesses because those are the only businesses I can afford to buy from, right? Which is not what I want, but at the end of the day I've got to be a little bit selfish over here. And then that obviously also then applies to my work. I would love to work with small businesses and support them, but those small businesses don't have a budget to actually pay me for the work, so I can then not pay my bills. So if I need to choose between working with a larger brand that can help me keep my business afloat and supporting a small business that's basically going to use my services for free to the extent that I then have to give up my business, I'm going to go ahead and protect my business. And I would love for that not to be a necessary trade-off, if you know what I mean, right? I would love for more small businesses to be successful in this hobby, more people buying from small businesses, but at the end of the day, whenever I advertise a small business, people complain that the product is too expensive. Whenever I work with a big brand, people complain that I don't support small businesses. So I feel like I can't win, the small businesses can't win, you guys can't win, nobody can win apart from the big business that ultimately takes advantage of small businesses not having the economies of scale, small businesses being more expensive, and people needing to really save money where they can. So everybody's losing, apart from the CEO of that big company. Oh, look at me. Look how you triggered me so quickly with that last question. Huh? And I suppose the same applies to the rental market, the same applies to groceries, the same applies to everything. At the end of the day, plants, especially growing houseplants, is a luxury hobby. Nobody's forcing us to do any of that. So maybe that answer was a little bit too deep and too meaningful for the question that you asked. Okay, maybe to give you a less loaded answer. I wish people would be more interested in learning the skill of growing plants rather than treating plants as objects that they want to own. But I think if you've gotten this far into this video, your thinking is probably in line with mine, so I'm preaching to the converted. On that note, I have done all of my meshes. I'm really happy I got them done. Hopefully I'll see some of you guys there. Obviously you'll see this video way after it happened. So I'm sure there's another video coming on updating you on everything. I also want to talk to you about where's Bradley? Over there. I also wanted to update you on my recent holiday that I went on to Perth and Rottnest Island. I had such a good time and I have so many really cute photos that I want to share with you. So maybe I'll do a little chilled sit down video with you afterwards as well, debrief on everything that happened. So let me know if that's something that you're interested in. Do you love these really chilled sit down podcast style videos, or is there always happening? Does there need to be more action, chopping, repotting, doing things, or do we like the more relaxed style? Especially now that I can spend a lot more time in my garden, I would really love to do more of them. Anyway, I better say goodbye. Thank you so much for watching. Like, subscribe and leave a nice comment, and hopefully I'll see you in my next video.